pediatric nurse practitioner specializing in pediatric primary care, providing comprehensive health services to children and adolescents. In addition to her clinical practice, Boyse has contributed to research on parental experiences following infant diagnosis of congenital adrenal hyperplasia, aiming to enhance support for affected families. Please join me in welcoming Kyla Boyse.
We have a little breeze here. Wow, it is so great to see all of you. Woo! As a nurse practitioner in primary care with children, I get to give a lot of vaccines. Yay! Or as we like to tell the kids, superpowers! Vaccines help those kids develop real superpowers to fight disease and keep themselves and their families and their communities safe and healthy. Recently, I attended an event at church and I wore one of my favorite t-shirts. I'm sure you're all familiar with this one. Got polio? Me neither. Thanks, vaccines! To my surprise, several older congregants approached me to tell me how they appreciated that message and to tell me about what they remembered about when polio was running rampant through society. They told me things like, it was awful. Thousands of kids died every year. We were so scared. My classmate was paralyzed. My parents were terrified, and they were so relieved when we could finally get the vaccine. Vaccines are tricky. Vaccines are tricky because when they work, nothing happens. Their amazing superpowers are invisible unless you remember. And it's easy to develop amnesia for the scientific conquerors of disease when there's no longer any reminder of that disease. Then something comes along like the measles outbreak in Texas. Now parents are lining up to get their kids vaccinated, but for some, sadly, it's too late to prevent the suffering and tragically even a death. In the last 30 years, U.S. childhood vaccines, not even counting vaccines for flu and COVID and RSV, have saved over 1 million lives. Prevented 500 million lifetime illnesses. And saved U.S. society $3 trillion. Now stop and think about this. Imagine a loved one, maybe your dad or your sister, your child, your best friend, seriously ill in the hospital from one of these diseases that we barely have to think about anymore. They're suffering. You're not sure if they're going to make it. That agony was prevented billions of times for U.S. citizens in the last 30 years by a few childhood vaccines. Vaccine development and expanding access to them has been a great use of our taxes. It has been a smart public investment. those superpowers are good for kids and families. They save lives, they prevent suffering, they help the economy, and they make our country stronger. Although vaccines come out from private companies like Pfizer and Moderna, they are built on often decades of earlier publicly funded scientists laying the groundwork. Before we can make vaccines, we have to understand so many things, like the basics of how our bodies work and how our immune systems work. A lot of critical investigation would not be done by industry alone if we didn't complement it with investment of public funds, our taxes, to keep that progress going. For example, decades of public investment in understanding messenger RNA allowed for rapid vaccine development during the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And saved millions of lives in the U.S., prevented untold suffering and long-term millions of lives worldwide, prevented untold suffering and long-term complications, and helped develop technology that is now being translated to tackle future pandemics. Anybody think of bird flu? And even for amazing new cancer treatments. Recent breakthroughs in innovative cancer treatments give me hope as my husband and I await the development of promising new treatments for his rare blood cancer. Cutting funding and even pausing funding makes it less likely a new treatment comes in time for him. Multiply this across all of the cancer patients and their loved ones across the nation, all holding our breath, all hoping. Withdrawing from our commitment as a society to furthering science has human costs. What goes on behind the scenes in science may not be visible to most of us, but we have invested in science and it has paid off in amazing ways in just a few generations. What goes on behind the scenes in science? I already said that. We must not have amnesia for how things used to be. And we must not forget how far we've come. We can't forget the devastation of diseases like polio and measles for our children. We must remember what the science of the past has done for us to bring us to this point, and then we can imagine the possibilities for the future. Just like a vaccine for the body, science is an invisible superpower in our society. Public investment in our science superheroes keeps our country healthy and strong. If we want superpowers, we need to invest in science. Are y'all ready to help me tell it? Okay. When I say, what do we want? You say superpowers. What do we want?
Superpowers.
What do we want?
Superpowers.
When I say, how do we get them? You say, invest in science. How do we get them?
Invest in science.
How do we get them?
Invest in science.